DECCMA places a lot of emphasis on delivering policy support to create the conditions for sustainable, gender-sensitive adaptation, in trying to create change. But in the process of undertaking our research, we also change ourselves. Here, two members of the consortium explain the change that they're experiencing in what they do and how they do it, as a result of their understanding of gender that they've learned through their involvement with the project.
The key interests that has evolved for me is in issues of equity, and particularly in gender, and refining the understanding of gender within climate change, within adaptation, and in the broader context of development. When we were putting the project together, we were very aware that we needed to have a gender component. We needed to make sure we didn't fall into the trap of thinking of gender as a separate project, which I think happens in a number of projects, in way too many projects perhaps, that you think, well, here is what I want to do, here is what I want to achieve, oh, but we better add an element of gender. And whilst I think that the intention of that is perfectly sound, I think sometimes the actual operationalization of it is that you end out with a group of people who study gender and have their own activity. So we began to think that rather like integration, which is absolutely fundamental to DECCMA, that gender should be a kind of a fundament as well, something that was part of the whole process, wherever we could and however we could address that. And I think when we started that out, we had that aspiration and that thought. And as the project has progressed, we've made sure that that's appeared. Sometimes that's a natural progression, sometimes that's built in, and sometimes you have to overcome barriers to that process, which may have been there from previous works, previous activities, previous ways of doing things. And I think anything to do with equity and changing people's modes of operation involves everyone learning. I mean, absolutely everyone has to be in that learning process. So when I started in DECCMA, I knew this was something I wanted to do. I'd done a little bit of work on it. I'd carried out elements of it. I would say over the last 5 years, my view on gender has become quite nuanced, perhaps compared. It has evolved. So I think the main evolution for me has been actually trying to consider how you operationalize gender into complex situations. It was a spin-off project called Wider. I think it's a good reflection of where my thinking has progressed. In that project, we've decided to try to develop some empirical relationships, some empirical evidence that will show, perhaps more objectively, some of the benefits, even quantify some of those benefits that we gain from carrying out gendered approaches. Yes, gathering data in gendered ways, but a lot more than that, perhaps in the qualitative way, in the way of, even in your thinking and analysis. And I think, for me, that's the major change.
I will like to talk about my experience. We do say that we are seeing the project with a gender lens. We have included right from the inception of the project, from the proposal. So how has it been helpful right at the beginning? So coming from a country team perspective, I will say that, on a lighter note, that my employment in this project, maybe because of a result of this inclusion of gender right in the DECCMA proposal, because it made my team look around and say, okay, we have so many male members in the project, but we need more female members. So maybe that I am here today because of that inclusion of gender in the DECCMA proposal. Now, when I started, I thought gender was more about numbers, like how many men, how many females. So in stakeholder workshops we used to say, okay, 10 female and 30 men, okay, we need to have more females. So we were thinking of increasing just the numbers, but as we moved on, it kind of dawned on me and on the other researchers that it's not just about numbers, but also about how we tap into the effectiveness of the communications. So in certain stakeholder workshops, we had the male groups and the female groups separated, and we had the females interacting with the female group and the male researchers interacting with the male group, and we felt it was easier that way, communication was more effective, and we were happy with it. We tried replicating that model in our the later workshops in both the deltas. From a management perspective, since I'm looking into the project management, when we were asked to scale up the research in Mahanadi, we were told that we need to take a new partner on board, and we realized that we really lack in the gender part of our research, that we do not have experts to guide us, to help us. The institute we have with us is Shamsrishti, who have a long working experience with women in the Mahanadi Delta, and that has really helped us in terms of our overall work as a team, because they do the reviewing, they kind of give us a new perspective before we hand out our outputs to the wider DECCMA team. So we have our side of understanding as well. So that has been really helpful. And well, my personal experience was, when I'm looking just at numbers, so I just found that we had a lot of, more than 95% of females could be interviewed separately during our household survey in both the deltas. So I think earlier it would have just struck me as a percentage that, okay, a lot of females could be interviewed separately. But because of DECCMA, because of my exposure to this, the way we see gender, and we are encouraged to see it, I went back to the researchers and asked that, so how much of this survey was done in rural areas and how much of it was done in the urban areas? And it emerged that it was mostly in the rural areas. So it made me think that when females are allowed to be interviewed separately in rural areas, it does speak positively about gender, about that area. And I felt happy that, okay, these are my deltas, and this is happening. This is a relatively progressive mindset of the people that we are seeing. So this was a very high point for me there.
Craig highlighted how his understanding of gender has become more nuanced as a result of his involvement in DECCMA, and how he has subsequently designed a spin-off project to empirically assess gender differences in livelihoods and migration in deltas. Shamana explained how greater awareness of gender amongst the DECCMA India management team has affected their recruitment decisions. She also explained how women's agency and capacity has been highlighted by making explicit attempts to conduct research with men and women separately, and how she now understands gender to be about much more than simply numbers.